Want to make your own Christmas stocking but think it's too complicated? Let me show you how easy it can be with AccuQuilt. Get a full list of tools and supplies at the So Much More website, which is linked at the bottom of this video. I wanted my stocking body quilted, but I didn't want to waste fabric on the back since it's lined, so I quilted directly onto the batting, no top fabric, and my Juki J350 QVP handled it like a champ. I cut my quilted stocking pieces into smaller sections to work with them through my AccuQuilt cutting system, 2 layers at a time. And since they already had batting attached, I kept it to just 2 layers to avoid any issues. Using the AccuQuilt Go Santa stocking die, the cuts were quick, clean, and perfectly shaped for my project. For the stocking lining pieces, I was able to stack multiple layers, up to 6 at a time, with my AccuQuilt cutting system. Since you only need 2 layers for the lining, this made cutting fast and efficient. I quilted the stocking cuff with all white layers, top, batting, and flannel backing for a clean, puffy look. I used the Snow Blitz design from the quilting mill to quilt the stocking cuff. The layers I used for the stocking cuff, the flannel, batting, and fabric, they were a bit much for the cutting system. While the AccuQuilt is designed to handle up to 6 layers, materials like flannel and batting are thicker than standard quilting cotton, so they add more bulk. I ended up needing scissors to separate a few sections after cutting. To make the process easier, I recommend sticking to fewer layers when working with thicker materials. It's just a good reminder to adjust based on the fabrics that you're using. Now before we start sewing, let's take a look at what we have. We have 2 pieces of exterior stocking. Now these are quilted, so I have my batting already attached to it with some quilting. And then we have 2 pieces of the lining fabric. It's the same fabric as the exterior, but this is not quilted, doesn't have any interfacing or batting on it. Then we have 2 pieces of interior cuff right here and 2 pieces of exterior cuff. This has got some batting quilted onto it, so that's what you see this texture for. So the first thing that we're going to do is our stocking. So let's go ahead and put right sides together for our external fabric, and we're going to line these up at the top and all along the sides, and we're just going to go ahead and use some clips to put those together. So I've got some clips here to use. You don't have to do a lot, just want to keep this all together so that when we put it on our sewing under our needle, that it stays together. Alright, so we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we're going to leave this top part open. Okay, so we're just going to make sure that we do some back tacking at the beginning and end. We're going to set that aside for now. We're going to take our lining pieces and we're going to put those right sides together. Now I'm going to take a pin or a couple pins and mark some like a no-sew zone, if you will. And so this is about 3 inches of space that I'm not going to sew, because this is going to turn into our place where we flip our project right side out. So there's a few inches right there that I'm indicating that I don't want to sew, because I'm going to use that later. And then I'm just going to use those clips to go ahead and hold some of this together. Doesn't need to be a bunch, just want to hold those together. So let's go over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew this all the way around. We're not going to sew the opening at the top or this little side right here. Now that we have our lining together, we're going to set that aside. Take those little pins out. Now let's start sewing together our stocking cuff. So we've got our lining pieces and our exterior pieces. What we're going to do on each one is we're going to do right sides together. Now this is a solid white, so either way is right side, but you will put right sides together on each piece. And then you're going to just sew the long raw edge, one side of the long raw edge on each of these individual sides of the cuff. Now we're going to take this and fold this over, but we want to press this seam towards the right side of the cuff, and that's going to give us a really nice lip when we flip this interior over. So I've got my Oliso M3 Pro mini iron. Just going to adjust or just iron that down. Hit it with a little bit of steam. We're gonna leave those open because our next line of stitches is going to be putting this together in a tube shape. But first we have to press. All right, so now we have both of our cuffs, the front and the back. And if you want to put like someone's name on one of them, make sure that you just give yourself some room for seam allowance, but you can put it on either side. You can do it now or you can do it later. But then we're going to sew these right sides together. We're going to align our seams right here. I'm going to put a clip here, and we're going to align our other side as well with another clip. And then we're going to sew on both sides. We're going to leave the top and the bottom open. So we're going to sew down both of these sides. When sewing the cuff pieces together, it's really important to sew the seam in the same direction that you pressed it. The seam should be pressed and sewn towards the quilted cuff for best results. This helps to ensure a clean, professional finish and avoids any bunching or distortion to the fabric. And to make the process easier, I used a stylus or a little stiletto to guide the fabric through the machine, keeping everything aligned and smooth. A little extra care here goes a long way in making your stocking look polished and well made. Now it's time to turn the cuff right side out and add a line of top stitching along the top edge. First, pull all of the lining fabric through the tube so that the wrong side is facing the wrong side of the quilted cuff. And you'll notice that there's some pretty large seams on either side, and these can be tricky when sewing. So to avoid any issues, I like to flatten those seams as much as possible before stitching. I use padded pliers to gently smash down the bulky seams, making them easier to sew through. I'm super lucky to use Juki sewing machines, which handle thick layers beautifully, but I know not everyone sews on a machine like this, so taking the time to flatten the seams can really make a big difference. For the top stitching, I use a longer stitch length for a polished look, and I switched to the free arm of my sewing machine to make it easy to sew around the cuff. I stitch about a 1/4 inch away from the finished edge, which gives the cuff a clean and professional finish. Next, let's make the hanging tab for the stocking. I put a piece of fabric measuring 6 inches by 3 inches, and then I folded that fabric in half lengthwise and folded it in half again to enclose the raw edges. After pressing it flat, the tab is ready to be sewn. To finish the stocking tab, I sew 1/8 of an inch away from each long side. This not only secures the folds, but it also gives the tab a neat and polished look, which is perfect for hanging the stocking. Now it's time to assemble the stocking. Start by flipping the quilted exterior stocking piece right side out, and take your time to push out the toe and the heel areas, making sure that the fabric is flat and smooth. Next, take your cuff unit and slide it over the top of the exterior stocking, aligning the raw edges. Match up the seams and clip all of the way around to hold everything in place. Now grab your hanging tab and fold it into a loop and attach it to the heel side of the stocking, aligning it with the raw edges, and make sure the tab is securely clipped in place. With the exterior and cuff clipped together, take the lining, which should still be inside out, and slide the entire assembly inside. Align the raw edges of the lining with the cuff and the stocking assembly, readjusting your clips to hold all of the layers securely. Using your sewing machine's free arm, sew around the top edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and end to secure the layers. Be sure all the layers are caught in the stitching as you go. Next, find the opening that you left in the lining and pull the stocking through that hole to turn everything right side out. Once the stocking is fully turned, stitch the opening in the lining closed. Finally, tuck the lining into the stocking, making sure that the cuff sits slightly above the seam where the lining meets the stocking. Adjust everything until it looks neat with the hanging tab visible at the top. I absolutely love how this project turned out. It's quick, fun, and perfect for making multiple stockings. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to head over to my website for all the links and details on this project. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more tutorials, and I'll see you at the next video.